Всем привет! С вами Слаймик 3000, и сегодня я буду продолжать играть в игру под названием The Стэнли. И я спустился в эту лабораторию.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Врубаем свет.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Бежи! Хотя ничего не будет. Без разницы.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
Непонятно, где его кабинет. Вон там люк.
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly? No. He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never! It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy, or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible...
Бам. Что-то неправильно я сделал. Угу. Точно. Сейчас что-то произойдет.
Blackness.
Плохое.
And a rising chill of uncertainty.
Чё?
Was it over? Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine. Unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him. For it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door. Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
И все? Да, и все. Нет, грузит. Сначала начнет. Точно. Да.
All of his co-workers were gone. What did it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of two open... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. The lounge was sublime, a work of art. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. And so he detoured through the maintenance section, walked straight ahead to the opposite door, and got back on track.
Нет, я мог спуститься. Черт. Это нечестно.
Yet there was not a single person here either.
Тут я уже все
Feeling a
знаю.
wave of disbelief,
Хотя-
Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there. Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
А это что за место? Firehouse.
But Stanley
Машина.
just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why
Куда я
had he
щас
taken that
приду?
risk? All
Опять
because he
машина.
believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to
О, там
Stanley.
выход.
Maybe, he thought
Черт,
to himself,
опять?
maybe I am crazy.
Да
All of my
как это?
co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example,
Ой, я
why
вышел.
couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors
Да
close
чёрт.
automatically behind him
Опять.
wherever he went? And for that
Да
matter,
блин.
these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real.
Опять машина.
And at last,
Да
he came to the
чёрт.
conclusion that had
Это
been on
реально
the tip of his
бесконечная
tongue.
игра.
He just
Ну,
hadn't found
точнее,
the
я
words
уже
for it.
прошел.
I'm dreaming! He yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation.
Да
His co-workers
что
weren't
такое?
actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical
почему он
star
взлетел?
field, and it too appeared. It was so much
Что
fun,
за?
and Stanley marveled that he had still not
Оставаться на
woken
свету.
up. How was he remaining
бежать.
so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head.
что за
One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a
бесконечно.
voice describing me, thinking about
мне
how
так
it's
нужно
describing my
ходить
thoughts, he
И
thought.
слушать этого
And while he thought it
занудливого
all very
мастера.
odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their
чёрт.
dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself? Believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words
Я
was quite
поставлю
a shock
на
to
паузу
Stanley.
и
After all,
продолжу,
he
когда
knew
отсюда
for
уйду.
certain he felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin,
Он
the
закрыл
press
глаза,
of the
короче,
mattress on his back,
и пытается
the
проснуться.
fresh air of
Еще
the
что-нибудь
world
по-любому
outside
произойдет.
this one.
Мне даже кажется, я
me
знаю,
wake
где он
up.
окажется.
He thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please. It's all I want. I want my
Заткнись.
apartment
Достал.
and my wife and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal.
Да
I
чё?
am normal.
Ты можешь заткнуться.
Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Сейчас откроет глаза. Да. И он оказался тут же. Где я остановился.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I?
Человек, мне не нравится музыка.
And everything went black.
Все закончилось?
This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her
Вот у меня единственный
belongings,
вопрос
and
по этой
walked to
игре.
her place of
Он
work.
заткнется
But
когда-нибудь
on
или
this
нет?
particular day, her walk was
Что?
interrupted by
Что
the
с ним
body of a
произошло?
man
Он
who had
умер?
stumbled through town
Нет.
talking and screaming to
Почему всё
himself,
закончилось
and then
так?
collapsed dead on the
Печально.
sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I
Он
know what is
спрыгнул.
real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a
А может,
certain
он
way,
умер не до
seeing
этого
this man
здания,
made her feel
и вся
better.
игра была
But then she
глюками?
remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people
Да
whose
заткнись,
impressions
достал.
of her would affect her
Вот
career,
честно.
and by extension,
Я
the rest
знаю,
of
что
her
я уже
life.
повторяю
She
за
had
эту
no
серию
time for this,
не один раз.
so it was only a
Он
moment
достал.
that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Все. Голый человек умер. И так весело закончилось. Опять. Короче, ладно. С вами был Сламик 3000. Подписывайтесь на канал, ставьте лайки. И всем пока.